My earliest memories of writing anything were on an old hand-me-down Packard Bell PC that I remember so vividly being set up in my room. And I remember one of the first things I did was open a word processor, probably like Word 97 or something along those lines. And I remember just writing stories, and specifically I remember writing shameless Edgar Allan Poe knockoffs about tortured artists and damsels and, gutters overflowing with rain and that kind of thing. And then as I got older, I remember writing some things for school. I remember writing like 2 short stories that I wrote for my English language class, and I remember specifically writing a monologue for my theatre class, and just getting like a lot of positive reinforcement, like my teachers saying genuinely and with enthusiasm that they really liked this stuff and that I was good at it. And honestly, it was probably that feedback that made me continue with it, I think. Who knows ultimately why we do what we do, but when I think back, like that's the thing that really sticks out. At some point in my late teens, I came across Clarkesworld magazine and speculative fiction, and that got me into looking at like the Hugos and the Hugo Awards. And I remember very, very vividly reading the story The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, and it just blowing my mind. And at that point, I think almost at exactly that point, I was like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to write this sort of fiction. I want to be published in, then it was Clarkesworld, and now, well, it's a lot of different things, but, anywhere would be nice. Funnily enough, when I decided that like that's something that I wanted to do, that was my thing, that's what I was passionate about, it was at that point that writing became a lot harder. All of a sudden, all of my like self-worth was tied up in my ability to write stories, and so when you kind of read over your work and you look at it again, or you submit it and you get a rejection, like everything hurts. And sitting down at the keyboard and actually finishing something just became very, very painful. And so even though this video is about being unpublished for 10 years, it's not as though in that time I've written hundreds of short stories and just rejection after rejection after rejection. In reality, in all of that time, I've probably written 2 a year, maybe. And that's not great. It's not great psychologically, because it means that I'm constantly living with this thing of this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be, this is what I am, but actually not doing that thing. And that schism has been like a part of my life for a while now. And in that time, it hasn't been all completely negative. There's been a lot of rejections, but there's also been some really nice feedback from editors. I've done pretty well in the Writers of the Future contest like a few times, one time being a finalist, but not being a winner, unfortunately. And all of that stuff is sort of, it keeps reinforcing that there's something there, I'm just not tapping into it. Ultimately I'm not giving myself a real good chance to succeed. And so that's what this year I'm desperately trying to change. I'm trying to give myself that chance, A lot of this stuff, it's a numbers game, and you need to write if you want to be a writer. It sounds so obvious when you say it like that, but it's surprisingly really, really hard to do. And so this year I'm so focused on writing. I'm so focused on getting words down every single day. And so far, it's going pretty well. It's funny, we're like over 20 days into January now, and I've written about 10,000 words, and the more I do it, the easier it gets. Who would have thought? But it's not just about the words. I think there's something else at play here too. I think ever since I read that Ken Liu story, I've been trying to write like Ken Liu. I've probably written a few knockoffs that are similar to that story. I've been trying to get that vibe, that feel. And probably deeper than that, I've probably been trying to write stuff that I think would sell or that I think might win an award. But I don't think I've been being very true to myself as a writer. And so this year, I really need to do it my way. My style, my voice, uncompromising. Don't care if it doesn't fit into wherever I'm trying to submit it to. By the way, a lot of these magazines read our stuff before you submit to see what kind of stories we like or we publish. I think that's like really mixed advice, and I think as a young writer, when I saw that, I was like, I need to write stuff like this. And I just think that's a bad way to go about things. You need to write stuff that's like you, and then if it finds a home, it finds a home. If it doesn't, it doesn't. At least when you look back years from now, and if I'm still unpublished 10 years from now, at least I'll be able to look back and say, I wrote stuff that I really wanted to write. I didn't write stuff that I thought people wanted to read or wanted to buy. Anyway, all this is to say that I feel actually really good about the year ahead. I feel really positive about my writing for the first time, and I think like the more I write, the more I'm creative, the more ideas start to come to me, the more excited I am about the stuff that I'm working on. So that's where I am on my journey. I'd love to know where you are on yours. Have you been writing for a week? Have you been writing for years? Have you sold stuff? Haven't you? What are you working on? What are you changing going forward? Are you in a good place? Do you feel good about the stuff you're making? I'd love to know, and let's get into it in the comments.